Welcome to the Trevor Meyer Show. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today we're going to rewrite Man of Steel. Finally, rewriting Man of Steel. That is what we're here to do today. So, this one, it took me a while to figure this one out. Ironically, the reason it took so long is because it's not a from the ground up rewrite, the way that it is with Batman vs. Superman, or The Force Awakens, or Bill and Ted, Face the Music. This is an actual rewrite. So this is taking what they already had and trying to make it work. It's structurally not that different from the actual theatrical cut of Man of Steel for a few reasons. One, I don't actually think Man of Steel is a terrible movie. I mean, if you look at some of the stuff that came after, like Suicide Squad, not The Suicide Squad, Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, Justice League, Wonder Woman 84. Of DC films, Man of Steel's not the worst. It's not even close to being the worst. And if anything, it's kind of in the middle. It's kind of a middling DC film. There's probably more worse ones than better ones in terms of starting with Man of Steel and moving forward with the DCEU. It's not one of the worst ones they've done so far. So it has that. It has this core to it that I like. It's just a lot of the surface details, a lot of, making sure it's closer to the source material, making Superman a more likable character who actually cares about people and doesn't run around destroying stuff for no reason. And also, it's gonna change the visuals of the film. I know that's usually more of a director thing, but as always, I am assuming 100% creative control of this project, which I know never happens in real life, so I can't give anyone too hard of a time when a movie doesn't turn out well, because it's made by a committee, and it's the studio is involved, the writers are involved, the director's involved, the actors are involved. Here, I'm doing all of it. So it's like, if you give me free reign to do whatever story I want, this is the one I'm going to do. The other challenging part, and why I couldn't change too much, is because my other video that I already made, Batman vs. Superman, rewriting Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, is a sequel to Man of Steel. So if I get rid of Man of Steel, a lot of my commentary in response to the destruction at the end of Man of Steel becomes irrelevant in the Batman vs. Superman video. So what I want is, I want my Batman vs. Superman video to work as a sequel to the real Man of Steel that they made, but also I want it to work as a sequel to this video right here. So you could watch this video and then go over to Batman vs. Superman. Alright, so just like in the actual movie, we start out on Krypton. Here's the first change. I'm going to make it a little bit more like the comic books in terms of the color scheme. I don't mean like the 1978 film where it's all white and crystals and shiny things. No, I mean like a bright, vibrant, four-color comic book visual style, the kind of thing that you had in Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy. Just bright, vibrant colors. And there's going to be a reason for that, because the actual film has this kind of washed out, monotonous quality that works in some sequences, but that shouldn't be how the whole movie looks. That should be sending a message about that particular part of the movie. We'll be getting to that later. But for now, Krypton is much more bright and colorful. Speaking of which, Jor-El, Superman's father, is wearing the Superman suit that he wears, in the actual movie. But it's much more the color scheme that you see in the comics. It's green. In the comics, it has like this little planet with a ring around it. The only thing I would change about it is just turn it into the Superman symbol, because that helps pay off the House of L crest and all that stuff throughout the movie. Other things that they changed in Man of Steel that, like, I don't get what the motivation was. When there's already source material to draw from, they created a whole new language for the Kryptonians. Their writing is a brand new alphabet. There's already a Kryptonian alphabet in the comics that was used prominently on the show Smallville. So, we're already familiar with what Kryptonian language looks like. So I don't know why they felt the need to create a brand new one like it hasn't been done before. Also, Kal-El's name is Kal-El. It's not Cal. His last name is not El. His name is hyphenated, like Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan. Alright? It's Kal-El. That's his name. He doesn't have a last name. That's not how Kryptonian names work. So, it's Jor-El, it's not Jor, and it's Kal-El, it's not Cal. But, like in the actual movie, we have Kal-El being born. That's the first scene of the movie. Then, Jor-El gets called to his lab by Jack Sewer. Jack Sewer is a character in the movie. Doesn't actually have any distinctive qualities, though. He's just one of the Kryptonians. But here, they're research partners. They work together in a lab, and they have their assistant Raya, who I think I just stole from Smallville. I don't know if she's actually in the comics. But Raya's basically there as the audience surrogate in this scene because they already know everything. They don't need to explain it to each other. So, like, one of them will say something, and the other will say, "Oh, no." And they have no need to explain it any further for the audience's benefit because they already know what they're saying. So we have Raya in the room, and then they can explain it to her and to the audience. So basically, what Jack Sewer called Jor-El in for was all of the drills on the planet, all the machinery that they've been using to mine the core, has just gone into overdrive. All right? It has gone past safety limits, and they are just drilling deeper and deeper into the core at unsustainable levels that, if unchecked, because nothing like this has ever happened before on this scale all across the planet, all the machines are going haywire for some reason, and if it goes unchecked, it'll start a chain reaction that'll destabilize the planet's core, and the planet will collapse, implode, explode, I don't know, but the whole planet will be gone in a matter of weeks. And Jor-El goes to the council, the planetary council, who's in charge of all things Krypton, and says, okay, we have to evacuate the entire planet. They don't have a good way to do that. They're not explorers anymore. They used to be, and centuries ago, millennia ago, they had these scout ships that went out and colonized worlds. Not really colonized worlds, but like checked them out and surveyed them, the way that humans do now. And at a certain point, they decided they needed to conserve their resources and kind of dial it back and just focus on staying home. So they haven't had a working spaceship in centuries. So that's one of the projects that Jack Sewer and Jor-El are working on because they realize that the planet's in danger, that the planet is dying. And you might be saying, like, well, why is nobody on this planet concerned about the fact that they're just destroying it slowly over the course of generations? I don't know. That would never happen in real life. So they, realizing that this planet is doomed long term, have been working on ways to get off the planet. And now they're saying, no, we got to do this like now. We got to get everybody off of this planet soon, like within the next couple of weeks. And the council's like, well, finish building those spaceships, man. Start putting them into mass production. And Jor-El says that they are years away from having anything that is viable. They're still in the testing phase. They don't even have a full-scale ship built yet. All they have is a miniaturized prototype that they've been testing to make sure it works. There's no possible way that they can make A, a working spaceship, and B, put it into mass production to get everyone off the planet. And the council says, so what's your plan? And he says, we have to send everybody to the Phantom Zone. And they're like, what? Now, the Phantom Zone in this version is going to work more like the source material and not so much like in the actual movie. In the actual movie, they coat everyone in jelly and then shoot them up like rockets into a spaceship where they send the spaceship into a black hole. And then when Krypton is destroyed, the ship comes out of the black hole and they are unjellified automatically because it seems like a good safety protocol to free all of Krypton's worst criminals in the event of the planet's destruction. They could have explained that, but they didn't. So this is not going to be like that. This is going to be like an actual zone that they get sent to where they are non-physical. They become non-physical beings. Their bodies are gone. They're basically ghosts. All right? So they get transported to this alternate dimension through a Phantom Zone projector, and it would be like a living nightmare. They only send the worst criminals in Krypton's history to the Phantom Zone because they have no death penalty. So what it would mean is they have to then put all of their non-physical beings, all of their spirits, if you will, into a place that's basically hell, where all of the other bad people have been sent from all of Krypton's past. And the council's like, no, that sounds terrible. You got to find another way. That is absolutely, that's not even a last resort. We just won't do it. We'll die before we go and send everybody on this planet to the Phantom Zone. And Jor-El says it's our only chance for survival. And they say, a fate worse than death. And he doesn't really have a good plan to get out of the Phantom Zone once they're in it, because everyone's non-physical. Like, there's nothing they can do once they're in there, and there's nobody on the outside to get them back out. So he doesn't really have a good plan to get out of the Phantom Zone. So the council has a point. Like, it's a half-baked plan, but it's the only way he can think of to get everyone on the planet to safety. And then they got to work out the details later. So council says no. So then General Zod and his rebel soldiers, not the entire Kryptonian army, very important. It's just a small group of his closest lieutenants who rebel against the Kryptonian government. And they storm the chamber, hold everyone at gunpoint, and by Zod's side is Jack Sewer. And Jor-El is like, you went to Zod? And Jack Sewer's like, we knew this wasn't going to work. The council was never going to agree to your crazy plan. Desperate times call for desperate measures. This is the only guy who's going to get stuff done. So Zod's plan is to take over the council, take over the ruling body of Krypton. He is of the belief that the reason why Krypton is doomed right now is because certain people did not allow action to be taken sooner. And he wants to save only those who will help the survival of Krypton in the future. So he gets to choose who he's going to save and who he's not going to save. And he's on board with Jor-El's plan to send people to the Phantom Zone, but not everybody. He wants to leave some people there to die because he blames them for Krypton's current state of affairs. And Jor-El is, of course, saying, we don't have the right to choose who lives and who dies. We need to save everybody. We'll all learn from our mistakes. And Zod says, no, can't let it happen. It's against my programming, because he is programmed to save his people, to protect his people. And by allowing some of them to die, he allows more of them to live. And that's his argument for only saving part of the Krypton's population. Now, Zod still wants Jor-El's help, because Jor-El is one of the only people who could get them out of the Phantom Zone once they're inside. Jor-El says no. They try to capture him, and he jumps out a window and flies on a dragon, and then grabs a skull from under the ocean and then infuses it into his infant child, like all fathers do. And if you haven't seen the actual movie yet, that's going to be really confusing, but I don't really... okay, fine. So, the Codex has all the genetic material for the future generations of Krypton, and they dissolve this Codex, which is in the form of a skull for some reason, and they, infuse it into the DNA of little baby Kal-El, so that when they send him off into space, he could potentially reboot the Kryptonian race on a different planet. Again, very similar to the actual scene in the movie, but they talk about how he's going to survive on Earth. And this is one change here, is that there's a good chance that he will not be able to adapt to Earth's atmosphere, and that he will just die shortly upon arrival. Let's say that there's a 1 out of 3 chance. 1 out of 3 chance that he'll die because he won't be able to adapt. But a 2 out of 3 chance that he'll be okay and he'll be able to adapt to Earth's atmosphere. Very important numbers, because as it is in the movie, anyone from Krypton who goes to Earth, they'll be fine eventually. It'll just suck for a little while. In my version, it's no, you got a good chance of just dying if you go to Earth without the proper atmosphere. So Kal-El's probably going to be fine, but not definitely. So that's part of the argument that Jor-El and his wife Laura have before they send their little baby off to Earth, because it is, one, he looks like them, and two, the atmosphere is the closest compatibility to Krypton that they've found so far in the, known galaxies. They use the aforementioned miniature prototype ship that's been modified slightly, because it's not just a miniature, because a miniature would be like a tiny little bridge and a tiny little warp core and a tiny little, mess hall, 10 forward and all that. But he would basically have to gut it and make it just a little chamber for this baby to lay in, but still leave all the essential components intact so that it can go into hyperspace. Right before they send the rocket ship off into space, Jor-El has this little key forged like he does in the actual movie, and it's got the little Superman symbol on it. And what he does is he takes out a dagger and he slices his palm and he drips some blood into the Superman symbol on the key. And the little negative space, this yellow part here, which would be empty on the key, the blood drips into that and just kind of like sucks inside. So the key's not just like covered in blood. It goes inside the key. And then he sticks the key in the ship, all right? Which is different from how it works in the real movie. But he adds his own blood to it, which copies his consciousness and creates an AI that he can use later on the ship. So, baby, into space. Zod comes in, kills Jor-El, the same as in the movie. Then they arrest Zod and his people, and they, then the council sends their people, because like I said, Zod has not taken over yet. The council still rules, most of the people are still loyal to the original government. And they capture Zod's people and have them sent to the Phantom Zone. They get blasted with the Phantom Zone projector, and then they just, they're gone. They're gone. They're in another dimension somewhere. Meanwhile, they're still trying to figure out how to get everybody off the planet. And the council, even at the last moment, are not willing to send people to the Phantom Zone. So, when they have that choice at the last minute, right before the planet explodes, they say, so be it. They're not willing to make that sacrifice. They're saying it's, the Phantom Zone is a fate worse than death, so death it will be. And that's it. The whole planet explodes. Laura dies. Everybody who's still on the planet is dead. And then we cut back to the spaceship. Spaceship goes to Earth. And then we cut to, the ocean. And it's, Clark. Clark is all grown up. Little baby Kal-El grew up to be Clark Kent, in case you don't know. He's working on a fishing boat. Now, this part of the movie is very drab and washed out and mucky looking. And it should be. This is the part of the movie where I would change nothing in terms of visuals. It should be washed out. It should be depressing. It should be dreary looking. It should be cloudy. It should look like a bummer, man, because he's not where he's supposed to be. And then he saves people on the boat, and he ends up in the water, and that's when he has the first flashback to when he's in school and he's experimenting with his powers and all that stuff. He's got heat vision, he's got x-ray vision, and he's got super hearing and all that. And that can stay the same. Then he's walking through a small town and he sees a school bus and he has a flashback to the school bus thing in Smallville. Now, here's where I would change some of the color palette. In Smallville, I think everything should be kind of gold and sunny. Just a nice kind of a warm, just golden hour. All the time, all day long, it's golden hour. To kind of distinguish the different places in this movie. So, It's mostly a gold color scheme in Smallville. Pete Ross, he's such a jerk in the theatrical version. You could say, oh, that's part of his character arc. He starts out being a school bully, and then he turns out to be Clark Kent's best friend. I wouldn't be friends with a kid who had bullied me in school. So I would say that someone like Lana's boyfriend, who could be Brad from the original film or Whitney from Smallville, but someone like that is bullying Clark, and then maybe Lana or Pete stands up for him, and the lines are drawn correctly. So then the bus goes in the water, Clark saves the kids, and then somebody goes to his parents, and it's probably, Lana's boyfriend or Lana. It's not Pete, not this time. And they say, it was divine intervention. Clark saved us all, God did this. And then Jonathan has this talk with Clark, and this is that controversial scene where, Clark was like, what was I supposed to do? Let him die? And Jonathan says, maybe. Now, here's the thing. I get the point that they were trying to make. I just don't think they did it elegantly enough. Because if you watch the show Smallville, his dad is very much like that. He's like, his priority is keeping his son safe. And he's glad that his son wants to help people, but his priority is keeping his son safe. All right? So what I would say in this scene is, what was I supposed to do? Just let him die? And Jonathan would say, no, of course not. But you have to be careful. You have to make sure that nobody sees you, because if anybody sees you use your powers now, they'll take you away from us. The only reason you're not in a lab right now being experimented on is because nobody knows you exist. Once they figure out that Clark Kent has powers and can do things that people can't, we'll never see you again. Or, maybe even worse, if they know you're Clark Kent, if they know who you are, they could use us against you, your mother and I. They could, capture us. They could use us to turn you into a weapon to manipulate you. So there are so many reasons why you can't tell people who you really are. You can't tell them that Clark Kent has these powers. That's the real important thing. Because they were really vague about it in the actual movie, where it's like, oh, you're going to have to choose the man you want to be someday, but not now. Not today. So it's like, no, you need to be afraid of everyone until you're not. But no, the whole point is that Clark Kent cannot reveal his powers to the world. So then, we got the thing where, Jonathan takes him down to the storm cellar and shows him a spaceship and says, surprise, you're an alien. And they do the whole talk, because this is a good scene, the whole, you're the answer to are we alone in the universe? And can't I just keep pretending I'm your son? You are my son. That was a great scene. It's like, I have no problem with that scene. There are some parts of this movie that are actually really good. So then Clark goes off and becomes a bartender, and he messes with the guy's truck, which again, I have no problem with, because he did that in Smallville too. Messing with somebody's truck who was bullying him, It's just, it's a little bit of wish fulfillment. It's like, we as the audience want something to happen to that guy. And he can't hurt the dude, because he would kill him, and that would make him unlikable, but he can mess up his truck. I'm fine with that. But then he eventually finds out that there's like an alien spaceship. He hears the guys in the bar talking about that alien spaceship, and he's like, oh, I want to go check that out. So, and then he gets a job carrying equipment for Lois Lane while she is investigating this spaceship that they found, the military found. So then at night, Clark goes down to the scout ship and checks it out. And this is our Fortress of Solitude. They never really nailed it down in the other movies. And we maybe won't call it a Fortress of Solitude in this one. But you know that in Batman vs. Superman, my version of Batman vs. Superman, it's the Fortress of Solitude. So just get that in your head. This is it. This is the fortress. All right? But it's the scout ship. It's the one from the movie. Lois Lane comes in, they fight the robots and all that stuff, and he saves her, and then he kicks her out, and then he takes the ship to the North Pole, and, talks to Jor-El, learns some stuff. It's the same as the movie, and he puts on the suit, he goes flying, and here's just an example of how I would change the tone, though. The movie is very serious. It is very drab. It is very monotonous in every sense of the word. So I would work in just like little human moments of comic relief. Not like to an extreme where it's like Superman 3. But just like little beats where like if that happened to you, this is probably how you would respond. So when he's trying to fly and he falls out of the sky and crashes through a mountain, I would just have him like stay on the ground for a bit and like, it's like, ow, or something. It's like when Iron Man falls out of the roof and crashes into his car and gets sprayed by a fire extinguisher, It's just, we need a moment where we thought it was going to be this heroic flight, and then he crashes through a mountain and he lands, and he's like, okay, that sucked. Something. He's got to say something. He's got to do something to make him seem a little bit more like us. And then he, sucks it up and he into the sky again. And that's when he has his first flight, which again, great scene in the actual movie. Love that part. All right, now, Lois Lane does track Clark, the way that she does in the movie, because she's a good reporter, finds him at the Kent farm, and then he tells the story of how his father died. Now, as much as I like the heart attack scene in the original, because it shows that Superman can't save everybody and there's some things he just can't do, I respect the fact that they wanted to do a different version of it, and there are a lot of tornadoes in Kansas, so, you know, like, there's another way, there's another message they could have sent. But I think the biggest problem with the scene was that the character motivations didn't make any sense. Jonathan, he does save a kid at some point, I thought, from the tornado. He says to Clark, you know, get him to the overpass and go, you know, go with your mother. Then Jonathan goes back for the dog. Not even somebody else's dog. It's the Kent family dog. And look, I love dogs, but there's an obvious way to do this better. All they had to do was flip it. Like, they opened the door to their truck, and the dog runs out like a normal dog, all right? So, like, Jonathan says, yo, get your mother to the overpass. And, of course, Clark is like, okay, well, I'm protecting people, so it's my mom, you know, so I'm going to get her over here. And then Jonathan goes back to save the kid. Duh, all right? Jonathan goes back to save the kid, not their own dog, somebody else's kid. And the kid is stuck. So Jonathan, you know, crawls into the vehicle, unbuckles the seatbelt, the kid gets out, and that's when the other car crashes on top of him, and he's pinned inside the car. Now, in the actual movie, he actually gets out of the car, and he's just, like, limping along, and then he just, like, lets himself get sucked up into a tornado. I'm saying, like, what if it's an impossible situation? What if he is trapped in the car and he cannot get out? All right? And the only way that Clark can save him is to very publicly super speed toward him and then throw the other car off of him and carry him out of there. Like, there's no way, there's no stealth version of this maneuver, all right? He has to, like, pull cars apart to get his dad to safety, all right? So that means revealing his identity, which they specifically said was the thing he should not do, because then he becomes a weapon, they know who he is. That's it. It's not that he's not supposed to save people, it's that he can't let people know that he has powers, all right? That's what the whole conflict is about here. So, in the actual movie, Jonathan gets out, and Clark's about to make a move, and Jonathan just... which everybody sees, by the way. So another way that this could have worked that would have been maybe more emotional and more unique and more realistic is to have Clark, he's about to move, but then he hears Jonathan talking to him through his super hearing. Jonathan is in the car, trapped, and he is talking to his son, knowing that he's the only one who can hear it. And he basically says goodbye to his son. And he says, you know, like, one day you're going to change the world, but not here. Not in Smallville, not for me. There are bigger things in this world for you to do. And you can't throw it all away right now to save me. And that's when, you know, Clark just sits back and the car gets sucked up into the tornado. You know? Which, again, like, in the actual movie, like, a wall of dust just kind of consumes Jonathan. Here, it's like you would actually see the car that he's in gets sucked up into the tornado. So it's the same scene. It's just a little bit different and a little bit like it makes sense what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then he goes back to Smallville and he tells Martha, his mother, his adoptive mother, that he found his people, that he found the Kryptonians. He knows where he comes from. And throughout this, we'll be like going back to Lois Lane because, you know, there's a lot of subplots. We got the government subplot. The government is looking for the spaceship that he stole, and he just left it there. He just left it in the North Pole. He took it away, and he moved it, and then he flew home in himself, you know, as Superman. He flew home to Smallville. And then again, in terms of like the color palette, Metropolis would be kind of silver. So Krypton is multicolored, bright, you know, Land of Oz, Thor Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, 4-color comic tones. The Wandering the Earth, you know, on the ocean, down the small town, all that is this drab kind of muted gray color. Smallville is gold, and Metropolis is like this bluish silver, like just like super shiny and modern looking. All right. So just break up the monotony a little bit to make it so it doesn't all look the same. Because everything is just like, make it look normal and then turn the contrast down. That's it. That's the whole movie. So now I just think it's like each thing. It's like the Matrix, how like the real world is blue and the Matrix is green. And they do something similar, I think, with Tenet. And something they do it again with the show Awake. That only went on for one season, but it was a great show where one universe was blue and the other universe was gold. Just so you could distinguish them, just like little visual cues to mix things up and show you where you are. So now at some point we cut back to the ship, which is just sitting there by itself. And there's like some kind of like blinking light or glowing thing that indicates that it's now in like standby mode or something has been powered on now that he's been on it. But all of a sudden, a light changes color or a symbol comes up on a control console or something. There is a Phantom Zone projector on this ship somewhere, and Zod and his gang of rebels all show up. They beam aboard the Fortress of Solitude, basically. And we'll explain how they did that later, but they're free. They're out. They're in the fortress now. They use the Phantom Zone projector to get out. By the way, in the comic books, I think Jor-El has something to do with discovering the Phantom Zone and finding a way to get people to and from there. That's not going to work in this version, though, because we need a Phantom Zone projector on the scout ship, on the Fortress of Solitude ship. So that, if it's thousands of years old and it's from their old era of expansion and exploration, that's not going to work because it's been around since way before Jor-El was even born. So this is a thing they've known about, but maybe Jor-El has spent a lot of time studying it, so he knows more about it than most people. So that's when Zod and his crew send the message that we see in the actual movie. But here's the thing. This was a problem I had with Aquaman as well, is that in Man of Steel and Aquaman, the main villain just comes out at the, in the movie saying, I'm the bad guy, come get me, instead of having a dramatic reveal where, like, somebody from their home, the hero's home, is reaching out to them and giving them a connection that they've always wanted, like a cultural connection back to where they came from. And then you can have a betrayal at the midpoint. But the idea that Zod is like, surrender Kal-El to me within 24 hours or I will destroy this entire planet. Like, what? Why is that your strategy? Why not just try to trick him? He doesn't know any better. Basically, it's a different kind of message. It's like a we come in peace type message, It's like E.T., it's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's like, what if Steven Spielberg made a Man of Steel movie, They're like, we come in peace, and we have one of our people among you, Kal-El, please, come back to the ship. We have so much to catch up on. Let's have a beer. Stuff like that. It's like just like an invitation. Like, Kal-El, if you're listening, come home. Come with us, And he's like, oh my God, my people, they're back. And he goes to the ship again, and Lois is not with him. All right, Lois is not with him. There's no reason for her to be on this ship. All right, but also, you might have noticed that we just like skipped over the part where like he turns himself over to the U.S. government and he's in handcuffs. And it's like, what's the S stand for? It's not an S. Well, here it's an S. That whole scene, we just skipped right over that. Don't worry. Okay, just hold up. So, Superman goes back to the scout ship, the Fortress, and he meets Zod and the rest of the Kryptonians. And he said, I thought Krypton was destroyed. How are you still alive? And Zod says, your father was able to save us by sending us to the Phantom Zone. This was his plan, to save as many citizens as he could by sending them to the Phantom Zone. So, kind of true, kind of a lie. And this is the part where Zod explains to Kal-El how they got out of the Phantom Zone. And Jor-El is the most brilliant scientist on Krypton. He didn't help. But they had the second most brilliant scientist, Jack-Sur, in the Phantom Zone with them. And he was Jor-El's lab partner. He knew a lot of the same stuff that Jor-El knew. So, what it took for this to work was Jack-Sur had to, much like a Green Lantern, hold the image of a Phantom Zone projector in his mind, all its components, in this non-physical space. So, like, no physical components. He can't, like, build something in the Phantom Zone because there is no physical object. It's just consciousness, it's intelligence, it's imagery. It's this very vague spiritual realm. So his specific consciousness had to hold the image of a Phantom Zone projector in his mind and all of its components, and it had to function perfectly. And there had to be a receiving pad that was active on the other end. So for all this time, for these 30 years, there was no receiving pad because all Kryptonian ships had been either destroyed or were dormant. But then Kal-El turned one of them on, and then there was a receiving pad. So once they had the Phantom Zone projector in the Phantom Zone, and they had a Phantom Zone projector outside the Phantom Zone, then they could leave. So as Jor-El suspected, it was possible. It would have been really difficult, though, for them to get out without somebody activating a ship on the other side, which is kind of the point. So why doesn't everybody just do this when they're locked in the Phantom Zone? It's hard. It's really difficult to do that, and only like the second most brilliant scientist on Krypton could manage that. So, and that's when Zod says, "We need your help to rebuild Krypton. We need the Codex, which he sent with you to Earth. The Codex has the genetic material for all future generations of Krypton, and we need that if we're going to repopulate the species." And he pitches it as like Kryptonians and humans will be able to coexist simultaneously on Earth with no problems. And it's everything that Clark's ever wanted. It's Krypton and Earth together on one world, so he can live in both homes at once. And at a certain point, he's like, well, we should talk to Jor-El, my father, because certainly he knew what he did with the Codex and could just tell us how to do this. And Zod's like, no, we don't need his help. I just need you to tell me where the Codex is. And he's like, I don't really know. I don't understand why we can't just talk to Jor-El. He's like, no, that won't be necessary. And at a certain point, Clark starts to like get the impression that they just don't want him to talk to Jor-El for some reason. And that they're obviously hiding something from him because he's smart. He figured it out. At a certain point, he talks about how he was in a little rocket ship and how they sent him to Earth. And they said, okay, the Codex is obviously on that rocket ship. You just got to tell us where it is. And he says, I'll tell you if you let me talk to my father. And they're like, clever girl. He has no powers. They have no powers. Nobody has any powers on the fortress. Which we can explain a little bit because, he did use his powers when he saved Lois on the ship, but it hadn't been activated yet. So it was still full of Earth's atmosphere when they boarded it. So when she's on it, when he's on it, when they're fighting the robots and he's cauterizing the wound and all that stuff that happened in the movie, it's filled with Earth's atmosphere. But honestly, Zod probably just turned on they show up out of the Phantom Zone, they're like, and they just they're like, oh, it's like I forgot to set this thing to evil, and they change the thermostat to Kryptonian, and then everything's fine. So at this point, nobody on the ship has any powers, but they can all, at least Zod's people can breathe easily without any kind of respirator. Clark, he's like, Wah! The way he is in the actual movie. So they're kind of at a standoff, and just like when Zod tried to capture Jor-El at the beginning of the movie, Zod is now trying to capture Clark. And just like Jor-El, there's no window to jump out this time. No dragons to ride. So Clark just, fights off a bunch of guys. And again, they don't have powers. Nobody has powers here. So it's a little bit more rough and tough, a little bit more brawling, But he pulls some kind of cheap trick and he's out of there. He's out of the room. He's running through a corridor and he finds himself in a room where he can lock the door. And he brings up a hologram of Jor-El and he's like, what the hell is going on around here? And Jor-El says, that's General Zod. He's the man who murdered me. And he'll stop at nothing to save the Kryptonian race, even if he has to wipe out all the humans on Earth. And Clark's like, whoa, hang on. He said we'd all be living together in peace. And Jor-El said, no, humans are not going to survive this transition. He needs to make sure that the Kryptonians can survive this atmosphere. 1 out of 3 Kryptonians will die on this planet. They won't be able to adapt correctly. He wants to save all of the people that he is going to bring into this world, and that means wiping out the people who are already here. And Kal-El is like, God damn it. Thought I could trust that guy. Finally, they get into the room, they capture him, and they lay him out on a table and mind probe him to find out where Smallville is, like in the movie. This is a stronger midpoint than the one in the actual film because it's where they turn on him. It's like everything's going well up until this point where they turn on him, which is what a midpoint should look like. Is, you know, it's the heroes making progress until everything flips and the rug gets pulled out from under him at the midpoint. And that's when everything starts getting worse. But now that Jor-El is on the ship, because Clark put the key into the console and, you know, had a conversation with his hologram, Jor-El can now manipulate things on the ship to a certain degree. Not take over completely, but like small operations, like opening doors and like helpful things that Jarvis does for Iron Man. And he basically helps Clark escape. Meanwhile, Zod is going to Smallville to get the little rocket that sent Clark to Earth. He's bringing Feora and Namek and the other, you know, the big Kryptonians, you know, his Kryptonian henchmen with him. And they have that scene where, you know, they confront Martha, they pull the ship out, there's no codex in it, big surprise. And then Clark shows up, and here's another change we're going to make. Because Clark should care about Smallville. He should care about the people in it. He should care when somebody's grain silo explodes. He should care when, you know, the local gas station goes up in flames, because it's his community. It's where he grew up. He knows the people who own these places, you know? He knows that their livelihoods depend on it. He's not like, yeah, collateral damage, it's all fun and games, right? Well, like, no, it's a small town where people, like, they're just humble farmers, you know, and small business owners who, you know, they need this, man. He knows that, so he would be more careful, I think. So any kind of collateral damage that happens has to be the fault of the villains, all right? And any guilt that Superman has in this comes from the fact that he couldn't save them, that he didn't do enough to save them. So it's kind of that Two-Face thing, you know, from Batman Forever. It's not so much that Batman threw acid on Harvey Dent's face to turn him into Two-Face. It's that some other guy threw acid on Harvey Dent's face, and Batman didn't get there fast enough, so therefore it's Batman's fault. You know, it's that villain logic. So the point is that Superman is not causing damage. People just blame him for not doing more to stop it, all right? So the bad guys are causing damage, and the humans eventually are like, well, you should have been there. You should have been able to stop it. I thought you were Superman. You can do anything. You're a god. You're perfect, right? Why weren't you there? So that's what's going to develop later, that it's not really his fault that things go bad. People just blame him for not doing more to stop it from happening. So we have this fight in Smallville, and it's the same as in the movie. You know, Zod's helmet gets damaged, and he starts, you know, breathing in Earth atmosphere, and, you know, he starts getting X-ray vision and super hearing and stuff like that. He's like, this sucks. And then they take him away onto his little... They have their own, like, they had to get to Smallville somehow, so they take, like, a little shuttle, you know, like a little shuttle launches from the fortress, and he gets on the shuttle and goes back to the fortress. And then Clark fights these, you know, Feora and Namek. The military gets involved, just like in the actual movie, and they're shooting at all three of them because they don't know any better. And when the fight's over, and Feora and Namek are gone, that's when Superman surrenders himself to the U.S. government. He says, I come in peace. They're like, yeah, we've heard that before, pal. And he's like, fine, you can handcuff me if you want. And that's when we do the scene in the interrogation room where he's talking to the military, and they're trying to figure out what his intentions are, whether or not he's aligned with Zod, and all that. So we still get to do that moment, but it's at a part where it actually seems to make sense. It doesn't have to be shoehorned in there because of Zod's weird threat to blow up all of Earth. Now, another benefit to moving this scene is that this is the scene where they have that conversation about, you know, what's the S stand for? It's not an S. On my world, it means hope. Well, here it's an S. How about and then she gets interrupted. And in the movie that actually got made, they let that hang, and then like an hour of stuff happens, and then for some reason the military is like, that's what they call him now, Superman. Now it's like, if we do this scene where she's like, how about then in the next sequence, when the military is calling him a Superman, we know that it was Lois's idea, and we get where that came from. So, now, a couple other small changes. In the actual movie, there is a character called Colonel Hardy. Colonel Hardy. And I wouldn't change anything about him. Nothing. Except his name. I'm going to make him Hank Henshaw. Colonel Hank Henshaw. Not like that's going to become important later. And then we cut to a new scene that's not in the movie, where they're analyzing the weapons that they've confiscated from Smallville. These Kryptonian blasters that the Namek and Feora were using on Earth in Smallville. And analyzing this weapon is one John Henry Irons. And he's taking a look at all the tech and explaining how the Kryptonian weapons work. Not like that's going to be important later. Now, in my version, I can't get this out of my head. I've been watching a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And Terry Crews. Terry Crews as John Henry Irons. It could be somebody else. But I can't get it out of my head. It's Terry Crews in my mind. So we're just going to have to deal with that. But that's it. That's his one scene in the movie. He analyzes a weapon and then he's gone. But John Henry Irons is studying the Kryptonian weapons for the military. And then at some point we have Zod leave the ship, and he's walking outside, and he takes his helmet off, and he's just testing himself, because he's already had a broken helmet earlier. And we see something like this in the actual movie, but there's a point where like he crouches on the ground, and he's just like kind of composing himself, and his vision is clearing, and the sounds around him are dying down. And as he like clenches his fist, the little pebbles around him start to float. And then he's interrupted, and he gets called back into the ship, and the pebbles drop back down. That's just a little bit of foreshadowing to show that Zod will eventually learn how to fly, which might become important later. So Zod's back on the ship, the Fortress of Solitude, and that's where Jack Sewer explains to him that the Codex is not on the little shuttle or anywhere else on this Fortress of Solitude. It is inside of Kal-El. Now, this is a part I actually got wrong when I did my Batman vs. Superman video. I said that his DNA had the genetic material for all of Krypton. But if that were true, even a single drop of blood would be enough. They have his blood already, but that's not enough. They need to like harvest his entire body, or like his entire spinal cord or something, but like it's not like DNA where it's repeated an endless sequence throughout his whole body. They need more of him to get more of it. So that's one little thing that's wrong with my Batman vs. Superman video, is that this one little drop of DNA has a whole bunch of Krypton's genetic material in it. I was like, no, not really. Not enough. Not all of it. So what Zod has done is he launches the World Engine to the other side of the planet over the Indian Ocean. But here's the thing. This time, it's not called a World Engine. It's basically the same thing, but it's called the Eradicator. Not like that's going to become important later. So they send the Eradicator down to the Indian Ocean, and they bring the fortress to Metropolis, just like in the actual movie, and they start terraforming Earth. They started blasting mass and gravity from one end of the planet to the other. Just like in the actual movie, Superman has to go to the Indian Ocean to fight the Eradicator, which will pretty much be the same thing. I don't think he'll lose his powers, though, like he was starting to in the actual movie, because I don't think it would have that effect on him, really. It might, but I need him kind of at like full Superman strength to pull this off. So now we get into the new plan, which is slightly different. In the actual movie, they crash Superman's rocket ship into Zod's ship, because Zod had his own ship in the actual movie. I've kind of consolidated things so that there's only one Fortress of Solitude. But they're trying to stop Zod from terraforming Earth and turning it into New Krypton. The plan is for the Air Force to come in and take down the fortress from the outside, which is just a little bit different from what they had before. So like in the actual movie, they crash the rocket ship into Black Zero, create like this hyperspace wormhole or whatever, and then all of the Kryptonians get sucked in. Well, I've already established that's not how the Phantom Zone works in my version. So what they're going to do is actually break into the Fortress of Solitude from the outside, get inside, get to the Phantom Zone projector, and send every Kryptonian within a 10-mile radius, 20-mile radius, however big Metropolis is, like wherever they would reasonably be, but not get Superman. That's the thing. Like they don't want to suck Superman into the vortex, so they set a range on it that like any Kryptonian within this circle is going to get sucked into the Phantom Zone. So that's their plan. They got to get on the ship, they got to get to the Phantom Zone projector, and they've got to send all of the Kryptonians back to the Phantom Zone. Now, and throughout all this thing, because you notice, like, I took Lois out of the ship where they mind probe him. I took Lois out of the final battle because why is she up there with the Air Force in the first place? That doesn't make any sense. Why would she be the one up there? She's gonna be where a reporter should be. She's going to be on the ground reporting on it. And you would still have all that stuff, like the buildings coming down, like when they're all holding hands, Toy Story 3 style, and they all think they're going to die. One of those people should be Lois. It should be Lois Lane and Perry White and, maybe Jimmy Olsen. I think it should be Jimmy Olsen, since they're going to bring him back in the next one and, kill him off in the first 5 minutes because he's an undercover CIA operative. Yeah, it should be Perry, Lois, and Jimmy that are in danger. Superman's fighting the Eradicator over the Indian Ocean, and it's partially made up of nanites, and it kind of starts to mirror him to the point where he's looking at kind of a reflection of himself in these nanites, and he eventually defeats it by throwing it into the sun. It's gone. It's in the sun. It's out of here. Out of this world. Probably forever, right? That's not going to come back at any point. Meanwhile, the Air Force comes in from the outside of the fortress. They blow a hole in the hull. And here's the interesting kind of ticking clock that they have, is that the Kryptonians don't have powers on that ship. But once the hull is breached, Earth's atmosphere starts flooding the chamber, which on the one hand weakens them because they can't breathe in that atmosphere and their senses are overwhelmed. But on the other hand, if they have respirators, they have super strength and super speed once Earth's atmosphere and sunlight starts getting in. So, at least at first, it's a fair fight. Humans can fight Kryptonians, and nobody has powers, and they just beat the crap out of each other, or shoot each other with energy weapons and rifles and stuff. So, this is a battle between the Air Force and the Kryptonians, and there's a point where their plan is to get everyone in and then blow up the Phantom Zone projector so they can't come back. All right, that's the important part, because if Jack Sewer gets sucked in, he can just get them out again. So they have to destroy the Phantom Zone projector. So there's a point where Hank Henshaw is in the room with the command key, and he's about to take control of the ship, and somebody takes a Kryptonian spear and just stabs him in the back, and he just collapses on the control console. He's like, I'm dead now. And that's it. He's gone. He's gone forever. He's never coming back. As the ship is blowing up, Zod is surrounded by soldiers, and he just leaps from the ship, and he's falling. He's falling to his death, and just before he hits the ground, somebody from the Air Force hits the Phantom Zone projector button and sucks in all the Kryptonians and sends them all to the Phantom Zone, and then they blow up the projector, and the ship crashes. A lot of the soldiers still survive, but, it's a crash, boom, they hit the ground. Superman comes back to Metropolis, and he looks around, he's like, oh my god, this is horrible. Look at this devastation, because I'm mortified by property damage, unlike the version they actually made. So he's actually oh my god, what the hell? It's not his fault, important, that one, he really cares about all the damage that was done to the city, but also not his fault. And it's the same as in the movie. It's like okay, well, it's pretty much done now. Everything's fine. Not really, but we stopped him. We did it. And then they see somebody flying across the sky toward them, and he, boom, crashes down right in front of him. It's Zod. Right before he hit the ground, he actually flew away out of the range of the Phantom Zone projector, And he and Superman are the only ones who didn't get sucked in because they're the only ones who could fly, and they were the only ones outside of the radius that was set by the Air Force to bring these Kryptonians into the Phantom Zone. So, this is another part, just like with the tornado scene, where the concept itself is not a terrible idea. It just needs to be justified better, I think. I think it needs to be Superman's only option at this point. So, Zod fights Superman. They fight each other in Metropolis. And Superman is, at this point, like, so desperate to stop Zod that he's maybe being a little bit careless at this point. Like, he's making mistakes that get people hurt or killed. And this is the one point where maybe he should have been careful. You know, he should have been more careful. And there's a point where, people give the movie crap for, like, nobody, he doesn't care about anybody until a family of four is about to be cut in half with heat vision, you know. And there's so many problems with that scene anyway, where, like, he's got Zod in a headlock, and Zod is shooting his heat vision at this family that, like, is in a corner, and you're like, could the family, like, run? Could they, like, get out of that corner? Or could Zod, like, move his eyeballs? You know, why are his eyes just locked forward like that? And, like, couldn't he have, like, knocked him unconscious or something? I don't know. But what I'm going to have in here, and just to kind of, like, bring it all together thematically with the military aspect of it, have a bunch of soldiers, like, shooting at him, and he's bulletproof. Nothing's happening because, like, they got powers. You know, he got powers now. He can fly. He's an evil Superman. And this should be, like, the manifestation of an evil Superman, basically. Like, Superman's worst enemy. Humanity's worst nightmare. Superman turning on them. Except it's Zod. So, he's bulletproof, and they're shooting at him, and he just starts killing people. He is killing people with his heat vision. Not going to, not about to, not a family of four about to get chopped in half with heat vision. He is killing people. He is actively in the process of taking people out in the room. And it's a judgment call on Superman's part, and maybe he regrets it. He probably regrets it. But he has to stop Zod, and Zod is just killing people. And, like, in retrospect, Monday morning quarterbacking, there were probably other ways that Superman could have handled it, but in the moment, he didn't know what to do. So he just snapped Zod's neck. And that's it. Like, I'm going to have him do the same thing in this, but it's just more justified because Zod is actively in the process of killing people and needs to be stopped, and nobody else can do it. So Superman does it. Now, later on, Superman may develop a no-killing rule, but in this case, I stand by the idea that, like, well, when did he come up with that rule? Like, did he decide that after he killed someone and felt horrible about it? Maybe. But also, all of that needs to happen to get to Batman vs. Superman, where he's haunted by that choice that he made. So, you know, would I have gone that way, you know, if this were back in 2012, you know, 2011, whenever they started making the movie, whenever the script was finished? Is this a thing that would have been in my mind at the time? Maybe, maybe not. But I got to deal with the consequences of that action and retroactively go back and still have that action happen in the first one so I can deal with it in the second one. And by the way, we know now that, like, General Swanwick might be somebody else, you know, from the Zack Snyder cut, if you know what I'm talking about. I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but General Swanwick might have his own kind of secret identity, but I don't know that. I don't know if Zack Snyder knew that when he made Man of Steel, so, like, we're going to pretend that he's just a dude, you know, he's just General Swanwick. So, and we still have that scene where Superman takes the satellite out of the sky and all that. Because that's great. That's when he starts acting like Superman, you know? It's like, you know, I'm here to help, but it has to be on my terms. I don't know, General. I guess you'll just have to trust me. You know, that's when he starts acting like Superman. That's when it feels like he's become Superman. The ending is very similar to the actual movie, where Clark Kent starts wearing glasses and he puts on a suit and tie and he gets a job at the Daily Planet. And it's nothing's wrong with that dialogue. You know, it's, you know, welcome to the planet. Happy to be here. That's a great exchange. You know, it's got so much meaning and it states the whole theme of the movie. Here's what I would change, though. And I did this same thing with Batman versus Superman. I'm going to make the same argument right now. You gotta use the John Williams Superman theme. It's like the James Bond theme. I don't care who's playing them. I don't care what decade it is. I don't care if you've rebooted the entire series. The James Bond theme is the James Bond theme, and the Superman theme is the Superman theme. All right? So even if you got to go like Casino Royale style and say that the whole movie, they never use the Superman theme, the end credits is when you use the Superman theme. That's when you've earned it. That's when he's at the end of his arc. And the whole rest of the movie can be the Hans Zimmer theme. The whole rest of the movie can be that Man of Steel music, but it has to end on the Superman theme. So, where does it go from here? This one ends, and then we go to Batman vs. Superman. And then, after Batman vs. Superman, the third part of this trilogy is the death of Superman. Some of you might have noticed the little seeding that I've done here and there to prepare us for that, because the thing about like the reign of the Supermen, which happens in the aftermath of Superman's death, is that it's too much to introduce in one movie. It's too much to have John Henry Irons come in as Steel, the Eradicator, Cyborg Superman, Superboy, all come out of nowhere in this third movie in the series, The Death of Superman. So if I say that here's John Henry Irons and he studies weapons for the military, even if we don't see him again until the third movie, we know he's doing something in the background. Even if he never shows up, he's out there and he's doing stuff, and we can think about that. The Eradicator has been thrown into the sun already and may come back. And, you know from Batman vs. Superman that Lex Luthor cloned Superman, which would be the first iteration of Superboy. And Hank Henshaw happened to be killed off in a room with the command key, where we know that if you spill blood into the little Superman symbol, that it'll save your consciousness inside the key. So, when he got stabbed in the back and blood splattered on the console, it's possible that Hank Henshaw's consciousness was preserved in the Kryptonian ship somewhere. So, this is all just stuff that I had to seed in advance, because like if you look at something like Infinity War or Endgame, those are great movies that only work because of the work that was set up before that. If you just went into Infinity War cold and you didn't know who any of these people were, it would feel like way too much. It'd be like Mortal Kombat Annihilation, you know? But if I set it up 2 movies in advance and you just have some time to sit with it and think about like, hey, when's this going to come back? The third one. It's going to come back in the third one. Now, again, I have to apologize. I keep making you empty promises. I keep saying, like, oh, I'm going to make new videos once a month, all right? And that was like 3 months ago. So, you know, these rewrites take a lot of time, and it's not my main occupation. It's not even my second occupation. It's my third. I mean, depends on how you define occupation, but, like, there's my regular day job. There's writing a trilogy of novels that I've been working on for the last 14 years. And then there's this YouTube channel. So, you know, I always have this little guilt trip. Anytime I work on a YouTube video, I'm like working on Man of Steel, I'm like, this doesn't matter. This isn't going anywhere. Like, it's just going to be a YouTube video, and then that's it. It's just going to die. You should be working on your novels, pal. So that's usually what I do. It's like, okay, don't have time to do a YouTube video right now. I got to keep working on my novels because that's actually going to get published and it's actually going to turn into something. But I do like making these videos, and I hope you enjoy watching them. So I'm going to try to make as many as I can. You know, I'm going to make as many as I can. I know that I'm not putting them out every day or every week or even every month, but I hope that once it's finished that it's enjoyable enough to be worth the wait. So if you want to know when my next video is coming out, I recommend you hit the subscribe button and then hit notifications, because another 3 months or so, you might get another video and you might want to know when it's coming. And if you like this video, if you think, you know, that's it, that's the Man of Steel movie we should have gotten, and you want to share it with your friends, go for it. Let them know that it could have been another way. And of course, leave comments in the section below. I try to respond to every comment. Sometimes, like, I can't find them. Like if I post a video from like years ago and then somebody posts a comment like today, I can't always find that comment, so if it takes a really long time for me to respond, it's mainly because I don't know how to use YouTube. So I'm just I'm trying to track down all the comments that people are leaving throughout my channel and respond to all of them, because I want to keep that conversation going, so it's not just a one-way street of me just talking to you, but talking with you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. So cool. A Jurassic Park Jeep just drove past my house. Seriously, it's like one from the movie. It's got a Jurassic Park symbol on it and everything. It's awesome.